All righty. Well, good snowy morning, everybody. It's great that we have a chance to do this, and without having to without having to venture outside of our houses. One of the real blessings of Zoom. So I am going to start off this morning with the collect for Saint Bridget. It is her day today, and next to Saint Patrick. She is one of the most beloved saints of Ireland. And so and her story is very inspiring. If you didn't get a chance to read it, it is actually posted. It's from Holy Men, Holy Women. It is posted on Bishop Stokes's Facebook page. He always does that every day. And so please, feel free to read a little bit more about it. But we'll start off with her prayer today. Let us pray. Ever living God, we rejoice today in the fellowship of your blessed servant Bridget, and we give you thanks for her life of devoted service. Inspire us with life and light, and give us perseverance to serve you all our days, through Jesus Christ our Lord, who with you and the Holy Spirit lives and reigns, one God, forever and ever. Amen. And then I'd also like to go ahead and offer a prayer for our country. I think that, and then also for our diocese. So let me do, for our country first, let us pray. Almighty God, who hast given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable industry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people the multitudes brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endue with a spirit of wisdom those to whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In the time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail. All of which we ask through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. And then finally for our diocese. O God, by your grace, you have called us in this diocese to a goodly fellowship of faith. Bless our bishop, our clergy, and all our people. Grant that your word may be truly preached and truly heard, your sacraments faithfully administered and faithfully received. By your Spirit, fashion our lives according to the example of your Son, and grant that we may show the power of your love to all among whom we live. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Well, welcome aboard, everybody. I have a few other people I need to admit from our waiting room here. I think that took care of all of that. And I am so happy to see everybody here for our session on preparing the parochial report. As I talked about before, there was a video that was done by the Episcopal Church. It was actually a presentation for diocesan administrators, but I've sort of tried to cut out the beginning part that was mostly focused on the diocesan aspect of it, because I thought the part that they went through to explain how the report is put together was just particularly good. So bear with me just a second here. I am going to just, let's see. Share my screen here. Hang on just a second. And we will get going, and then we'll have some time for Q&A afterwards. So I want to share the sound. And if for some reason you're having trouble hearing or having any trouble at all with the video, then please just put a message in the chat so that I know. So here we go.
So this first page is obviously just the basic information and address for the congregation. It is very helpful to have accurate addresses. We do use that for mapping purposes, and in order to, we do have an interactive data tool. So we do like to have good, accurate information. So please do be sure this is accurate information. Then we move to the preparation and certification page. Much of this is very much the same as it has been in previous years. You will notice at the bottom of this page, there is a new section that asks about the number of people who participated in the completion of this report. As you will see, as we get further along in the report, there are some very different questions than have been on the report, given the nature of this past year. And so the hope is that this report particularly is really an opportunity for your congregations to tell the story of their ministry in these challenging and unusual times. And so that the report is more than just some quantitative data. And so we hope that the congregations will be consulting with beyond the vestry and with others in order to complete this report. And then we move to the membership and attendance page. Much of this is the same in terms of asking the same questions about current membership, changes in membership things. One place that is different for 2020 is that the average Sunday attendance on line 7, we're asking that you only calculate that for the Sundays from January 1st to March 1st. Given that so many congregations had to close at some point in March, and some of them have not been able to reopen, the way to have the most consistent data across the church is just to look at average Sunday attendance for the first 3 months of the year. As we move down, you'll certainly see that we do still ask for numbers of services and things like that for the rest of the year. But for consistency, we're just going to calculate average Sunday attendance based on those first 3 months of, or really 2 months of the year, just from January 1st to March 1st. And you'll see there that there's not, we're not asking for Easter attendance because there were so many congregations that were closed on Easter. And then in terms of the service numbers, i.e. the number of Eucharists conducted, the number of daily office services conducted, we are asking to track both the in-person versions of those. So when the congregation was open and they were able to have, people in the pews and be present there. So that will be one set of service numbers. Then the other set would be how many services were conducted online. And for many congregations, that will probably be lots of daily office services. But there were some congregations that could gather, a small group of people, like just the worship leaders in the congregation, in the church building, to celebrate the Eucharist. And then that was streamed to the rest of the congregation. So it would be those kinds of circumstances. So when we're asking about online Eucharists, we are asking about an instance where, there was a small group of worship leaders in the church and everybody else was joining online. So that's what that means. We also are not asking about total church school students enrolled, since that process has obviously been very different for communities in 2020. Instead, the report asks for both adults and children who are engaged in religious and spiritual formation, as well as some questions about the impact of the pandemic on that formation. And the other questions there on this page are remain the same. Matthew has a question.
I just want to clarify, when you say online,
yes,
you mean that would include both whether they streamed it live or if they recorded it and broadcast it at a certain time?
Yes, thank you. Yes, either whether it was streamed or recorded and broadcast. Yep.
Great, thank you.
Yep, and we're going to get into a little more detail about online worship on the next page as well. Elise.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, now I'm unmuted.
You are.
So I just wanted to confirm, and pretty sure I'm mostly asking this because we have a congregation that tries to do this. And so I just want to be able to say, no, I asked the General Convention office this question. So on 24A and 24B, these are individual people who have participated in formation probably multiple times, but they only get counted one time.
Right. We're just asking for people, not numbers of how many times they participated or how many formation events were offered or anything. No, just the total number of people.
That was what I thought. But again, I'm mostly asking that question.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Greta.
Thank you. Greta Getline, Diocese of Vermont. In that same section, on question 23, regular Sunday or weekday adult education programs held, yes or no? I'm not quite sure how to guide people on answering that if they held them for the first 3 months and then didn't hold them for the next 8 months and then maybe began again in December. Would that be, if their pattern had been to consistently hold them, but then moved away from that because of COVID and then began to move back? How do they answer that question? Yes or no?
I think that would be if they regularly offer, their general practice is to offer an adult education program. The answer is yes. And then if there was a significant impact, i.e., they stopped it for 8 months, they would show that through 24C.
Perfect. That's what I was hoping you would say. Thank you.
You're welcome. Right. We move to the next page. So this is following on Matthew's question, a bit more, asks for a bit more information about how worship happened in the course of the pandemic, whether or not worship happened online, how was it done, what were the various platforms, was it live streamed, was it pre-recorded, did you do both of those things, all of those various questions. So just trying to get a general sense and also trying to get a sense of whether most of the people in a congregation have the ability to access online worship. So those are just sort of overviewing questions. One of the questions that certainly has come up is a question about counting attendance in online worship. Because that was all sort of new to all of us, there was not clarity about how best to do that so hence the report does not ask for those level of details. We will be asking for that going forward, and when we send out the email that Iris mentioned to all the congregations, that includes some best practices that have been developed for how one would count participants in online worship going forward. But we're not expecting folks to be necessarily to go back to that since guidance was not previously offered. So we will have that going forward. So for now, we're just asking sort of what platforms did you use? How did you do it? But not the granular detail of the number of participants. So then we move to the financial page, which largely remains the same as previous years. The one question that has come to us about in this is, how does a congregation report a PPP loan? As many congregations did apply and receive PPP loans. That only shows up in line 5 if by the end of 2020, it has been converted into a grant, because loans are not recorded as operating income according to general accounting practices. So it would only show up in line 5 if it has been converted to a grant by the end of 2020. Otherwise, as you will see when we get to the next page, there is a separate line that just asks about, did you apply for a PPP loan? And if so, how much did you receive? So if it is still a loan, the only place it gets reported is in line, you'll see on the next page, line 22. If it has become a grant, it does get recorded in line 5. Otherwise, this page really remains unchanged from any previous years. It's all the same questions you have seen before. There are some new ones, and that's where we'll go on the next page. So this is where it asks about the PPP loan, and also, as you will see, we're moving into something a little bit different with the 2020 report, which is to give some opportunity for narrative. There's a little bit here, and there'll be more later. Interestingly, if you go back in the history of parochial reports, long ago, they were almost entirely narrative reports. Maybe 100 years ago or so, they were sort of like ember letters from a parish to the bishop and to the wider church. So we're bringing back a little of the narrative in the 2020 report. So you'll see here, there's an opportunity for 3 questions, just looking at the opportunities and challenges, what innovations were done, sort of what has changed the most in how a church conducts its ministry. So we hope that this will be a useful tool for congregations to reflect on the circumstances of the last year, as well as for dioceses to know even more detail than you already do about what has been done in your congregations in the course of this time. And we are in the General Convention Office are looking at resources and tools for analyzing this kind of qualitative data to see what other kinds of reports we might offer next year, once all the filing is complete, along with the usual statistical reports that we publish. Matthew.
Matthew Payne, Diocese of Fond du Lac in Northeast Wisconsin, in case you think we were in France by accident. I just wanted to say thank you for having the line that specifically breaks out what the PPP loan forgiveness amount is. Our diocese has already decided that we are not going to include PPP loan forgiveness as income when we do our calculations of our diocesan asking. And I appreciate that line being a separate line, because then we can do that easily when we download the spreadsheet, and we won't have anyone yelling at us as to why their assessment is going up by 30%.
Thank you, and thank you for noting that. And we are going to make sure that that's very clear in the instructions and in communications to the dioceses going forward. Because I understand from our other webinar yesterday, you're not the only diocese that's decided to do its assessments differently, given the PPP loans and the current circumstances. So, thank you, Martha.
I'm Martha Smith from the Episcopal Diocese of Oklahoma in Oklahoma City. Okay, our diocese processes the payroll for about 90% of our churches. So the diocese applied for the PPP loan. The churches that just for the churches for whom we process payroll and for ourselves. Okay. Yep. So those churches did not apply for the loan. We did. Now they were granted money from the loan. It's because we process payroll under our FEIN. So they couldn't apply for the loan because they're not processing payroll under their EIN.
Yep.
So we applied for the loan.
Mm-hmm.
We gave loan money proportionately to each one of these churches to cover their payroll for 4 or 5 pay periods. Yep. And so would they report on line 5 that they received X amount of money as a grant because we're the ones that applied for it? Now, we have not received loan forgiveness yet. It's still in process. But I don't believe that the plan would be to try and pull money back from the churches. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And we anticipate it will be forgiven. But so
I think if
for whom I process payroll, do they report how much we gave them on line 5?
I think not, because it's still in loan status.
Okay.
If you all get it converted before the end of this month, then yes.
Yeah,
So otherwise, I would say that they would only, you will maybe want to communicate particularly to your churches to please ask them to put the amount they received from the diocese, earmarked that way in line 22.
Line 22. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Because the goal of line 22 is to know how much each congregation received through that program.
Okay. Do they say, no, I did not apply for the CARES loan, but yes, I received money for it? Because they didn't apply for it.
Well, they did through the diocese, really.
Sort of. Yeah.
So I think their answer to there would still be yes, because
Will be yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
As I just want them all to be
Yes, thank you. I
consistent.
appreciate that.
And
Yep.
I know there will be many questions. So
Yes.
I just want to
and
know.
I know and I think you aren't the only diocese that either did a single application because of the way you process payroll,
Right,
or
right.
or did a on behalf of kind of application. So you're right, that there are other places where the loan happened at the diocesan level. Mhm.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. So then following on those, sorry, Sarah.
Hi, sorry, thanks. I just want to clarify. So I'm sorry, and I'm from Eastern Michigan, Sarah Philo, from Eastern Michigan. So on line 21, regardless of whether it's a loan or been converted to a grant, they're going to check yes.
Right.
Okay, but if it's been converted to a grant, they only put it on line 5 and nothing in line 22?
No, they would still put it in line 22 as to how much they receive. Well, and part of it would be because if they, in some instances, a congregation may have received a large amount and may or may not have, how much they used of it is what goes in line 5.
Okay, so if it's been converted to a grant, really the amount's going to go in both lines?
Right. Yes.
Okay.
If it's been converted to a grant, they're going to report it in both places. As Matthew noted, right, it helps to know. Otherwise, it disappears into line 5 and we don't necessarily know the specific number. So that's why it's also asked on 22, is so that we know as how much of a loan they got.
Grant goes both places, just a loan goes on 22.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. So then following the narrative section, there is the clergy page that remains unchanged in 2020. That is exactly the same as has been in previous filing years. Then we move to the outreach ministries page, which has generally been the final page. And that is slightly modified from previous years. You may remember it used to ask sort of broader questions about some or few or many. And we tried to, this year, the effort is to make it a bit more specific and concrete and numerical. We're also aware that many congregations changed how they did outreach in 2020 because obviously the needs of the community have changed in many cases very significantly. So asks what kinds of ministries the congregation has, whether or not it was new in 2020, and then an estimate of the number of volunteers involved, as well as the number of people served. And you will notice that these are numerical fields. You can only enter numbers here. So if you if you don't have concrete numbers, you can tell the story in the narrative sections, but this those fields will only permit numbers to be entered. So you cannot enter some or few or many, those kinds of descriptive terms. You will need to just estimate the number of volunteers.
And I just wanted to add that we are working on being able to allow a number 16 and number 17 instead of a large text box that doesn't quite give us good information as to the estimated numbers that we're asking in the other fields. So this is a work in progress. As you see, the next page is called Outreach New, and if you go there, it's not working. So we're working on that. In the past, we used to get just a paragraph or a few lines, and it just never gave us enough or good information. So it is a work in progress. It's almost Christmas and vacation, so we're hoping to have it by January, but just wanted to let you know that we're hoping to have that available.
And then the final page is the Mark Complete page, which is both for the parish to officially mark it complete and for the diocese to verify it. Please do be sure that your congregations and you complete these pages, because it doesn't become officially into our archive until those buttons have been clicked. So it's great if you've entered all the data, but it's not official until you've clicked some, completion. So please do make sure that your folks do that. And you can tell, as Iris noted in the sort of diocesan level piece, you can see which reports have been marked complete and which haven't. So if you need to follow up with somebody to say, hey, are you really done? It looks like you're done, but you didn't say, hit complete. So you can, filter that way to know who hasn't become official yet. So there is your whirlwind tour of the 2020 program report, and we are glad to answer additional questions or to talk about anything else related to reports and research and statistics in the General Convention office that would be helpful to you all.
I also want to add that the filing site for 2020 has not yet been rolled over because we're still working on some of the updates. We're still adding a few inline help texts that you don't see currently, but we're hoping to add. So if you were to log in, using your login information, you'll still see 2019's information. We hope to have it available so you can begin looking at what it will look like when it opens officially in January. Just sharing that. And we've got a few questions. So Samantha.
Hi, Samantha Wiley with the Diocese of Los Angeles. I just wanted to clarify the difference between in-person and online worship. You mentioned if you had worship leaders in the church building itself, that counted as an in-person service?
If you have a congregation present in the building, that's an in-person service.
Okay.
Whether or not it was live, whether it was just in person or live, even if that was also live streamed, that still counts as an in-person service because you have a congregation gathered.
Okay.
If you had a circumstance where only, 3 or 4 people are there and there's no congregation, even though there are 3 or 4 people in the building, that's really an online service because there's no congregation gathered.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. How?
Okay, I guess, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Being fairly new at this last year, beginning of this year, I should say, I know that there are congregations that I never heard from in filling out their reports, even though I nagged them and nagged them and nagged them. So when I send out my reminder or nudging letter, email, text, carrier pigeon to them this year, I know they're going to say, well, I never established my email address or my password, or I forgot my user ID number and so forth and so on. So where do I go to find those?
Iris can pull that up on that first initial page there. You can see all the login information for the congregations in your diocese. So there's a tab there with parish login information.
Right. So when you first log in, you'll see your landing page. But if you jump to the parish login info, you'll see, let's say, All Angels New York. This is their, if they didn't log in last year, you'll know because they have a 8-digit UEID number, which was their login previous. That's what it has been for years up until last year. So you would be able to upgrade here, enter their email address, save it, and then they would log in using the email address you just entered and using their PIN. Right now, this is a sample example, so you we're not able to do an example, but we do have a screencast now available on our website where it'll walk you through it. If you go to this particular link, you'll see a walkthrough of how to do an example. Like, it'll give you an example of how to do that. And of course, if you have, I can also schedule a time with you. We can, I'm always happy to do one-on-one Zoom with any administrator or user. So feel free to email me and we can do a one-on-one if that's more helpful to you.
Thank you.
Nina?
Yeah, Nina Gasper from the Diocese of Texas. Just two quick things. One is the average Sunday attendance from January to March. Is it specified on the screen? I might have missed it. That's what it's required.
Yes, it's specified it will be specified in more detail in the instructions page, and there will be a little window there or a little pop-up on that screen to be and wording there. So yes, it should be pretty clear to folks on the filing site in and the instructions in multiple places to be clear that that's how you calculate it. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And then one suggestion, is there a way for the pages that have updates for there to be a highlight on what was updated, or is that, just because if there's only one update on that particular page, they're going to be worried. I know we're going to get so many questions saying, oh, what else was updated? But if it's like highlighted clearly that that's the only updates, it's just a suggestion if that's possible.
Yes, so actually if I'm going to pull up our congregation here, Christ the Lord. So on the left menu here, we have highlighted what pages have been updated, what page is new. Mm-hmm. So this is the best indication for a congregation to see which pages have been updated from last year and what's new.
No, I saw that. I just wasn't sure then within the updated if there could be highlight for the items that were updated, or that might be too much,
the actual question?
The actual question. So there's maybe only one or two questions in this page, but just a suggestion. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew?
Matthew Payne, Diocese of Fond du Lac, Go Packers. I am an advocate of using the workbooks. And in fact, the folks in my diocese get tired of hearing me say that. But more importantly, to save them so you can refer to them to see what you did the previous year. In that vein, I have a request. Is it possible to put the links to the workbooks on the download page, which is the place that most people would go to if they were looking for the workbooks? Because I know I have a few folks who always get confused because they start looking for the workbooks on the filing site and they're not there. So I'm just going to ask if that might be possible.
Yes, I have asked for this. I'd have to double check with my web developer. It was something that I have been asking. But with so many edits to the new parochial report, that was our major focus. I don't think it to be a difficult thing to do for this year, but I will check again.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, and then I just wanted to also add really quickly, the workbook has now been, we've created a web page for the workbook. So, some that are more tech savvy or is just used to using a web page, we've created the workbook and instructions as a web page. So if you're looking on a paper, or if it's easier for you to navigate, there is that also on our website under Parochial Report Instructions for 2020.
We have another question. Toy?
Hi, Toy Robertson, Diocese of the Rio Grande. And I was multitasking when you answered this question, go figure. So did I hear you right to say that 5 or less is not considered an in-person service?
Well, it's not necessarily about the number. It's really about whether, because in some congregations it would only be 2 or 3 people to lead a worship service, and in some congregations it would be 10 or more. It's really a question of whether is the people gathered in the building just the worship leaders and there's nobody sitting in the congregation.
Okay.
So in-person worship was you are permitted to gather a congregation. It might be very small, but there would be a congregation there as well as the people leading the worship service. So that's in-person worship,
Okay.
even if it was streamed online.
Some of our smaller parishes back in the day when our governor had limited could have 5 in their building and still have an in-person service.
Right.
Okay.
So it was really about whether everybody in the building was just there to lead the worship and the whole the congregation was only joining online.
Okay.
Or was there people gathered? And so in which case, you might have 2 people at the altar and 3 people in the congregation. That's
Correct.
still in-person worship.
Okay. That was what I needed to know. I appreciate y'all.
Sure. Thank you. Other questions? There's another resource that we just want to make you all aware of in case you are not aware. As I mentioned on the address page, we do have a mapping tool. So there is a study your neighborhood section of the General Convention website that allows you to look at all the congregations in the United States currently. We're working on getting it more broadly than that on a map, and examine both the trends, the parochial report data trends, as well as demographic information. So I just want to draw your attention to this page to let you know the button there that says Understanding Data Trends links to a site with a whole bunch of sort of detailed explanations, as well as a recording of a webinar we did in April that really delved into what kinds of resources are available in this tool and how a congregation or diocese might use them for strategic planning and just reflection on the life of a congregation or the life of a diocese. And some of you may have been familiar with the demographic reports that used to be available through Mission Insight. Some of that information is now available in the Explore Neighborhood button. You can drill down to a particular congregation and collect and pull a multi-page PDF that offers a whole bunch of demographic information within a 15-minute drive of that particular congregation. One piece there that we did get some questions about in the past is obviously for some of our congregations, a 15-minute drive time is not actually a helpful. We were sort of trying to strike a happy medium and get what would be most useful to the vast majority of congregations. But certainly if you are in Manhattan or you are in North Dakota, 15 minutes means 2 very different things in those locations. If you would like a customizable demographic look at the area around a parish on the main page for Study Your Neighborhood, at the bottom, we link to some additional resources. One of them is the resource from our colleagues at the Church of the Nazarene. They are wonderful, and I think they love data even more than we do, and they have created an amazing tool that's customizable so you can look at census data for the area around a congregation, or anything from 1/10 of a mile to 25 miles, and it will create a customized profile for you. So if you're looking for that sort of level of nitty-gritty granular detail about the area around a congregation, or for a much larger geographic area than our 15-minute drive time would provide, that is available through that resource. So just wanted to make sure you all knew how you can use some of the parochial report data once it has been submitted.
Also, many of you probably are still receiving parochial reports from 2019, and some have asked if we still accept it. We still do. We always will accept reports even as far back as whenever. We do keep it for our archiving purposes, but mostly what our plan is that we would update our information that we use here in Study Your Neighborhood with the information that we received after the parochial report filing site has closed. So although we'll accept it, we can't reflect it on the filing website, but we do use that information to update the Explore neighborhood, which is the participation in giving trends chart that most of you are used to seeing, which is the 10 years, and it's the 3 variables that we use, which is membership, ASA, and plate and pledge. So those 3 things is what we do take from the reports that we receive that are late, and we update it. The next update that we hope to do is in mid-January, hopefully. So just so you all aware, that is what we do with the parochial reports that we receive that are late.
Samantha.
Elizabeth White, and I have
Here we go. If we do have 2019 parochial reports for you that are late, what's the best way to get that to you? Like a PDF attachment to an email, or?
That's it. Yeah, the PDF is the best way because unfortunately, because the filing site has to be closed, I take that and manually enter it into a spreadsheet. There's not another way that we can do it now. But that is the best way. So hopefully, I mean, this year has been a different year because, of course, with the pandemic, we have received many more reports that are late. But we will take the PDF and we'll enter that on our end.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Well, please know that this is not your last opportunity to ask us questions. We are glad to be available to you all. PR@episcopalchurch.org is the best email to use when you are writing about any parochial report related questions. And we are planning on offering again in January, once the filing site is open, a sort of similar Q&A time, office hours, if you will, on Zoom for you all, or to answer any questions once everybody gets sort of into the process, and you all may have different questions based on how when congregations start filing. We also would like for you to be thinking and to let us know today or just in email. As you may know, because the State of the Church obviously updated the program report this year, they are also looking at updating it again in 2021, particularly since so many of the new questions this year were very particular to 2020, and what will need to be asked in 2021 will be different again. One of the questions that they would love to know from you all, particularly who use parochial report data, is there something you wish the report asked? Or is there something you are continually asking on a local level that would be really helpful if it was in the parochial report across the church? So if there's something else that would be helpful for them to be thinking about adding, please do send us an email or let us know now. Phyllis.
I was just curious where this recording is going to live once it gets posted.
Thank you. We will be sending. We will send an email with a link to a place where you can download it as well as sort of the other folks who weren't able to attend. So we will have it posted and it will be emailed to you. Thank you.
All right, so there we go. I realized that there were some things that were included in that recording that might not be specifically pertinent to congregations because it was the the target audience was for diocesan administrators, but I also recognize that there was some information that they shared there that is definitely not included in the screencast information that they referred to, which is basically nuts and bolts of navigating, how you move from one page to another on the site. And I thought that, some of that information and particularly some of the questions that were asked were really valuable, things for us to be able to know too, especially when they got to clarifying about, the difference between what is online worship versus in-person worship, and, how you do the counting, and the fact that you don't really, for the attendance figures, you're only going from January and February's numbers, and anything from March on, you're just counting services, not counting people. So I thought those were, valuable things for all of us to know. I do have some questions in the chat, and I appreciate your patience with, waiting to the end of the video. And so one of the questions from Elizabeth White was, when completing the report online, can you sign out and return to complete the form? And the answer to that is yes. One of the things that they did say is that you do need to complete one particular section. So, when Molly was referring to all of the different sections that were in that left-hand menu, once you get into one of the sections, you'll need to complete that section, or at least put some data in the fields before you can actually save and leave. But yes, you can, once you've done that, you can save that and you can come back into it and complete it at any time. So, that part, will definitely work out. And I want to see who else we got there. Let's see. And John Tate was asking me if I could list the website for the General Convention to access the workbooks if they're not on the diocesan website, and I can certainly do that. One of the things I did want to share with you at the moment, let me get back into my share screen here. Yeah, here we go. So this is the email the e-blast that went out from Steve last week on Friday and Saturday. And I'll make sure that this also, gets posted on the website to make things easier. But this one here lists all of those links that, that Molly was referring to. So there is this walkthrough screencast for congregations that's right here. Literally does go through a video screencast of, it's really right down to the bare bones basics about how do you log in? What do you do if you forgot your login? And, all of those different kinds of situations that you might, find yourself in. How do you move from screen to screen? Can you save when you're finished with one of the screens? And it really just does a great job of going through all of the real basics of the form itself. So that link will help you there. And, here's the web page workbook and instructions that she referred to, and all of the, the form and instruction links are here. So that part of it is something that you can also access. And so let me go back, stop sharing. I guess as long as I'm here, because I have these up here already anyway, I am going to close that out and do, so the screencast for for parish users is here. This is what it looks like. It's the video that just walks you right straight through it. Forms and instructions. This is that field that's there. I will also make sure that we have the link, because I thought it was really interesting, and maybe something that a lot of you haven't really thought about, is how they actually use the data. So I think, that part of it could be very helpful for us to be able to see. You could see any other congregation in the Diocese of New Jersey. You could see any other congregation in any diocese in the Episcopal Church that files parochial reports. And the demographic, the data, the office that does this, the Office of General Convention, are just fantastic when it comes to a lot of that, the way that they keep the data and updating it even when it's late. So, so yes, John, I will have that easily accessible. And I'll make sure that there is a follow-up email, that comes out to everybody who registered for this workshop, so that you'll be able to access it easily.
Thanks.
Did you have another question, John? Okay. And so I had another question. Who do we contact for login help? And that would be either, at this point, either myself or Tanya. We can help with that. Because as you saw demonstrated, we have the ability to access the entire list of congregations within the diocese, and we can tell whether somebody from your church already logged in with an email address and created a password, and maybe you've forgotten or they've forgotten, or if you didn't do that and you still have the old UEID number and the PIN. And we can reset those things so that you can, go ahead, and we can tell you, what they reset to. And then you can go ahead and log in, and it will immediately ask you, as you saw on the screen, it'll ask you for an email address. So it's important to remember, moving forward, and we might not have been, paying quite so much attention to this last year. But it's important to remember, when you enter in that email address, you need to enter in an email address that can be stored and remembered, and as well as the password, because, so that we can make sure that that's, that you have that information moving forward. Or if you're changing over people who are primarily responsible for the filing of the report, and you need to change those things, make sure that that transition happens in a way that people can actually remember how to get back in and access it. So, but if you don't, if you do lose that information, then contact either, just send an email. Best thing to do is send an email to both Tanya and myself, to be able to, so we can respond to you as quickly as possible. And there was a question. We had online worship services that were just liturgy of the word. What would they count as? They would count as online services, but they would not necessarily count as Eucharists, specifically as a Eucharist. So that's how that would be handled. And Chuck Messer was asking, there are sections of the 2019 form that are blank regarding membership, attendance, and services. Do I need to re-enter those figures? No, as a matter of fact, you can't at this point in time. As I think it was Iris was mentioning that, we can go ahead and send them information from old parochial reports that they do enter in. But the only thing that they really focus on is the plate and pledge, the membership, and what was the other one? Membership. Oh, and attendance, ASA. They focus on those three specifics, so that they can be as consistent as possible with their trend information, but they don't necessarily go back and update everything. So so just move forward for 2020, and that'll be fine. So the next question, when Molly said that we report PPP funds only if it turned into a grant, by grant, did she mean that the loan forgiveness process has been completed? Yes, the answer to that question is yes. So until you actually have completed and received notification that your loan has been forgiven, it's still a loan. And it only appears on that line 22 of the parochial report. Sunday virtual service with spiritual Eucharist would be considered a Sunday daily office or Sunday Eucharist service? That's a really good question. I think I probably want to investigate that one a little bit further, Nicole, before I answer it, because I want to say, because I feel very strongly about that, spiritual Eucharist being Eucharist. I want to say that, yes, it would be considered a Sunday Eucharist service, but I'm not really sure. And I don't have enough of the theological background, I guess, to really make that call. So I'm going to ask that question and get back to you on that. I'll make sure that I circulate that around to everybody. Eucharist question. Bear with me while I make my notes, without which I will forget. Our parish has an active Laundry Love ministry. I can tell you how many units of Laundry Love have been distributed, but I do not know how many individuals are served by each unit. How do I report the number of individuals served by this ministry? I would just say if units is what you know, then units is what you should report. It would be kind of impossible to tell, you've got somebody coming in getting help for their entire family, it would be really, I think just a total shot in the dark to do anything else but just report, how many units. My question is about counting going forward. We worship by Zoom, but it is also broadcast over YouTube. Do you count participants that are on both platforms? I think that'll result in some duplicates. One of the things that I noted that Molly talked about, when you should have all received an email, because again, that video was made, as you could tell, right before Christmas time. You should have all since that time, and obviously the filing site is now open, that part of it that's past history. And you should have also received an email from the Office of General Convention regarding the parochial reports, where they talked about having some clarification on how we count things, what best practices are. And I know they're going to be coming out with some follow-up documentation on that. And for now, I agree with you that there might be some duplication if you're counting on both platforms. I nevertheless I would, because obviously if you don't do that, you're going to be omitting people. And so I would just, go for both platforms and just understanding that there's going to be, some overlap. Because they're also, obviously, if you're using YouTube or Facebook, some people use YouTube, Facebook, and Zoom, so there would be, and in person. So, it's kind of putting it all together to get the most accurate count you possibly can. Everybody knows this is not going to be perfect, and that's part of the reason why General Convention is still working on their guidelines, or the Office of General Convention. Let's see. Yeah. So do you count a Liturgy of the Word service as a daily office service? I have to go back and double check. I thought I would say that, if there is not a specific place to count it as a Sunday office, then I would count it as a daily office service. But I'll have to double check on that one too, Anne Marie, and make sure that I'm correct on that. And I think that's all the questions that I had in chat for now. Happy to take any others that anybody else might have.
I have one.
Go ahead.
On the financial page on line 15, it says major improvements and capital expenditures. Mm-hmm. Would that be all the things that we had to purchase for Zoom and online streaming?
For me, I think that would really go more under operations. Major improvements, capital improvements are something that either add to the value or extend the life of your property. And I don't think that would really qualify. What you're doing there is enhancing your capacity to be able to actually, do your services. So that should really go up in operations.
Okay, and I have one more question about outreach on that page. Like outreach is listed on line 13 and line 16. Like we give to different things that are organizations in our community. Is that from the operating budget or not operating expenses?
And a lot of that depends upon how the funding comes through for the outreach that you're doing. So some congregations have a specific part of their budget that is allocated to outreach ministries. And then, you know, even over and above that, they may do specific fundraising things during the year that are not budgetary, that also fund outreach that they do. So for the things that are budgetary, they would be operating expenses. For the things that are outside the budget, they would be non-operating. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep. And if some of the outreach that we do is that goes to seminaries, then that should be broken up between 16 and 17.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. And I see that Mantel helped me out. Thanks, Mantel, by saying on line 13 is the spot to put a daily office service on Sunday. So thank you for that. Any other questions? Not seeing any. Alrighty, well, as I mentioned, I will, you know, make sure as soon as possible after this meeting that we get the information, especially for the more basic instructions, the screen share for congregations that literally walks you step by step, you know, through pretty much every field of the parochial report, and if you need help with that navigation. To help you move through there. And as always, I'm available for any other questions that may come up when you're completing your report. Please do remember the due date for the parochial report is March 1st. So we've got about a month from now. That's the due date for it to come to the diocese, and then we have to pass it along to the Office of General Convention. So we have to go in behind you and actually verify once you've completed your report and you've marked it complete, you know, that it's good to go. So I appreciate your attention today. I appreciate your attendance today. I hope it was helpful for you. You know, again, just thank you for being a part of this introductory part. And I wish you a safe rest of today and tomorrow, as we, I guess, as I understand, still have yet to get the main brunt of the storm later on today. You know, so just stay in if you possibly can, be safe. And I will look forward to seeing many of you again in a couple of weeks. We will be doing another session on the PPP loans, just so that you know. Now that we've got more clarification on second round stuff and forgiveness applications. So we will lead off our next session specifically on PPP loans in a couple of weeks. And I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible there. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everyone.